let our last guests come on in and sit down. I do understand that the Twins game is tied 4-all in the top of the 8th. Bottom of the 8th now, still tied 4-all. I appreciate the dedication of each and every one of you coming out this evening with the important game being played on the other side of the river. I'd like to cover just a couple of ground rules before we launch into all the good stuff. And that is that there is no campaign literature allowed in the forum while the forum is going on. Please remain as quiet as possible while our candidates are speaking to give each of them a chance to answer the questions fully. This forum is not a debate. A lot of us have become accustomed to debates on television with our last presidential election. The rules of this forum are structured slightly differently, and this is a forum. I will be asking the questions. If you have a question for our candidates, please use one of the index cards, fill it out, and hold it up. We have a couple of volunteers over here. You want to catch their eye. They'll be collecting the index cards from you, sorting them, and handing them to me so that we can proceed. Wanted to make sure you were aware of that. You are welcome to submit as many written questions as you'd like for your candidates this evening. Just hold up the card. All of the questions written do become property of the League of Women Voters, and any question you submit can become evidence in the court of law. So just that you're aware of that. So again, good evening. My name is Jacqueline Schroeder. I live and vote in Burnsville, Minnesota, and will not be engaged in your current local election for St. Paul City Mayor. I'd like to thank our candidates for coming this evening, and of course all of you in particular for coming out on this rainy evening to hear these important comments. It is our purpose in sponsoring meetings such as this to provide you an opportunity to hear your candidates discuss issues face-to-face that are important to you. There is never enough time to cover all of the issues in a limited time and setting such as this, but I will try to address all of the topics that you raise. Questions that fall in the same general area may be consolidated to allow us to cover as many topics as possible in the time we have allotted this evening. The League of Women Voters, the sponsor for this evening's event, is a nonpartisan volunteer organization organized at the local, state, and national levels to encourage citizens to participate in their government. While we as a league do study and take stands on issues, we do not endorse or support political parties or candidates. The views expressed in this forum are those of your candidates, not those of the League of Women Voters. And the sponsorship of this forum is not an endorsement of any of the candidates. We do encourage our membership as individuals, as we encourage each of you to get involved in your community and the political party of your choice. We have invited Chris Coleman and Eva Ng to speak with you this evening at today's forum, and both of them have agreed to attend. Thank you very much for coming. Each of our candidates has agreed to follow the forum rules of the League of Women Voters, and I ask that each of you follow them as well. Thanks so much for helping us make this an open discussion. Each of our candidates will be given 2 minutes for their opening statements. Questions will be collected from the audience, as I've indicated, and I will ask the questions of our candidates in a rotating fashion. Each candidate will be allowed a 1.5-minute answer period, and if desired, each will be permitted a 1-minute rebuttal. Our timekeeper this evening is volunteer Sarah Risser. She is seated directly in front of both of our candidates, and they've been introduced to her. She will be holding up note cards indicating when our candidates have 30 seconds left, so that they're aware of when they're about to run out of time. I do ask that all of you hold your applause while the candidates are speaking and refrain from any outbursts. We will be celebrating all of what they have to say for us at the end of the evening. I do need to address one order of business, and that is the speaker order for our speakers this evening. which I apologize I didn't do before you sat down. I'm going to ask our speakers to draw from 2 sticks. These 2 sticks are numbered on each side. Eva Ng has won the drawing and has chosen to speak first with opening remarks. The candidate's order will be altered for the closing remarks, and again, as I mentioned previously, the questions will be asked in rotating fashion. We have a good list of questions already submitted from our audience this evening. So I'd like to begin by offering it to Eva Ng for her opening remarks. Eva, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Hello, everybody. My name is Eva Ng. I am no one special. I'm just an ordinary citizen who has stepped out of the ranks of the private sector to represent each and every citizen in St. Paul. I am running a nonpartisan race because in the spirit of this race, local races are all nonpartisan. I cannot even buy an R behind my name, even if I want it. However, I am endorsed by the Republican City Committee. A little bit about my background. I am the eldest daughter of 2 people who were separately orphaned and escaped communist China when they were 12. They walked their way out of Hong Kong to freedom. My family immigrated to Texas when I was 10 years old. I embraced every opportunity that was put before me. I earned scholarships, survived many odds, and graduated with the first generation of female chemical engineers out of Texas A&M University. I spent 30 years in the private sector, 10 years as a presidential fast-tracker, troubleshooter, in a Fortune 100 company, turning entire departments around every 2.5 to 3 years. 10 years as a turnaround specialist for small to mid-sized companies, ranging from 2 to 20 million in size. I typically turn one of those around every 3 to 5 weeks. I came to St. Paul as a result of a company that I turned around here in Eagan, a company for which I eventually became CEO. I am running for mayor to apply my life skills to do real work for the people, not to become a celebrity, not just to create a political career, and not for any personal gain. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would refrain from applause until the end of the evening, or it's going to be a very long night. Chris Coleman, 2 minutes for your opening remarks, please.
Well, thank you very much. And first of all, I want to thank the League for your willingness to host this event. You always do such a good job. And I want to thank Eva for her participation in the process and her passion for the city of St. Paul. I want to thank my wife, Connie, for joining us here this evening. Unfortunately, my kids had an option of the baseball game or the debate, and shockingly, they picked the baseball game. 4 years ago, I was given one of the greatest honors of my life. I got to be the mayor of the city that I grew up in, the mayor that I love, the mayor that my wife and I are raising our kids in. I ran for mayor because I didn't like the direction that the city was heading in. I saw the council and the mayor at loggerheads. I saw a structural deficit that wasn't being dealt with. I saw a community that was feeling like it was shut out of the process, that didn't feel like they had a voice in governance of their community. And I saw deterioration and neglect in our public buildings, in our libraries, and in our parks. So I ran for mayor and was elected. And I opened the doors to City Hall, literally and figuratively. My predecessor had installed a security system that prevented council members, community members, reporters, and anyone else that wanted to go back and talk to the mayor's office, the mayor's staff, or the mayor himself from being able to get back into that office. On the day that I took office, we opened up that door and we opened up City Hall. Because of that, we were able to tackle some long-term problems. We were able to solve a $16 million structural deficit by putting a 4-year plan in place and actually solved it in 3 years. We were able to move forward on the construction of the Central Corridor light rail line after 30 years of discussion. We were able to reinvigorate downtown St. Paul to the point where the Minneapolis paper had to admit that downtown St. Paul was the new hotspot. We saved 500 jobs at the old Rock 10 plant on 94. We did it because we worked together. That's the kind of mayor I've been. It's the kind of mayor I will be.
Thank you. I'd like to move now to our first question. Eva Ng, should you be elected mayor in St. Paul, what would you choose to prioritize?
Should I be elected mayor of St. Paul, the top 3 things I would prioritize is 1, I want to freeze the tax and fee rates right now. And then I'm going to work to reduce them. And then I'm going to go and find ways to streamline the operations of City Hall to make everybody successful at what they do. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grow the tax base by creating jobs. And I have a couple of ideas for that. Then the last thing that is high in my priority is that I want to make sure that we are safe and secure as a city, that we prioritize our spending for fire, police, and emergency services. Make sure that our roads are repaired where they're supposed to, and those would be my top priorities.
Thank you. Chris Coleman, same question.
Thank you very much. One of the first things I did when I came into office was I put a strategic plan together. It was a 6-point plan. First priority on it was education. Even though the mayor of the city of St. Paul doesn't control the school districts, it is absolutely critical for the future of our community to be engaged in the education process, to make sure all of our children go to school ready to learn. So we started a scholarship program that has provided 900 scholarships for kids to attend a quality daycare or preschool program so that they're not starting off 2 or 3 years behind when they start kindergarten. We put together an out-of-school time program by engaging the community and figuring out what kind of services we could bring to the community so that kids could participate in quality out-of-school time programming. As a result of that, literally thousands of children are taking a circulator bus that we put together. 30,000 kids have ridden that bus to get to quality out-of-school time programming at the Y, at the Boys and Girls Clubs, at faith-based groups, arts groups, all these kinds of things that have been put together in the community. So we put that together as a priority. We put public safety as a priority. As a result of it, we've added more police officers than any mayor in the history of the city of St. Paul. There will be 615 officers on the streets of the city of St. Paul next year as a result of our efforts. In addition, there's going to be 18 additional firefighters in the fire stations that will make sure that those 4-minute response times that are critically important to the health and safety of our community will not only be maintained, but perhaps even strengthened. We have done a lot of priorities. Thank you.
Your time is up. Thank you. Eva Ng, same question.
I have a quick rebuttal to that. Is that Mayor Coleman, I know that you did a lot of scholarships for these young kids, but they were 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, and it tells me that this program was not successful because it's discontinued for next year. On 2010, we do not have any budget for that, and then plus, that was a mayoral overreach because education does not fall into the mayor's office. We have an advisory role. We need to form relationships with the school board to get these things done, but we cannot do it out of the mayor's office because that money comes out of the citizens. And then second shift program. I have too many people telling me those buses are rattling up and down the street with nobody in them. So something is not working right about that program. The people on the east side actually take photos of that bus going up and down hour after hour, and there's no one in them. They say it's a smoke and mirrors fake program. So that's all I got to say about that.
Thank you. I'm sorry, if our audience members would please refrain from applause until the end of the evening. Yes.
I don't believe that a program that it engages kids, that gives them opportunities, that helps them get off to a good start could ever be called a smoke and mirrors program. It's really about doing everything that we can. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you change things overnight, but you begin a process. We engage the foundation community. One of the things that I'm proudest of is we've been able to bring $25 million worth of foundation resources to our office and to do things like the scholarship program, The unfortunate thing is, given the fact that we have one of the worst economic times in the history of this country, a lot of those resources are no longer available. But we know it works. The research that was done by the Federal Reserve in Minneapolis has proven that every dollar that's invested in early childhood education is returned 16 or 17 plus times during the course of that children's lifetime. We have no choice but to do everything that we can. And so I hope that the people that are taking pictures of those buses would rather spend their time going out and getting kids to ride those buses to get to those quality programs.
Thank you. I'd like to now move on to the next question. I have a number of questions here regarding specifically downtown St. Paul that I'd like to address. And I would ask Chris Coleman to be the first to address this question. St. Paul has vacancy issues in the downtown area and needs to be positioned to thrive in the economic recovery we all hope to see. What is your plan for revitalizing St. Paul's downtown?
That's a great question, and I appreciate it. There are a lot of components to making a downtown core successful. You have to bring businesses into your community. We have done that. We just recently announced that 320 jobs with Cray Computer are coming into downtown St. Paul, taking 60,000 square feet of office space in what will soon be called Cray Plaza. It used to be called Tier Plaza. We're bringing Microsoft. Think about that. Microsoft Computer that can go anywhere in this region has decided to come into downtown St. Paul. We've seen the expansion of Gov Delivery, which is an incredibly important, fast-growing computer company, high-tech company, and those are the kinds of jobs that we're going to continue to expand. Bringing Central Corridor and high-speed rail to Chicago are going to be critical to bringing in success into downtown St. Paul. Having a thriving nightlife. The fact that we've been able to open up 12 new restaurants and bars in downtown St. Paul in the last couple of years, in the worst economic time that this country has faced since the Great Depression, is one of the things that helps people bring their businesses there. It doesn't happen overnight, but the fact of the matter is the old phrase was that downtown St. Paul is dead. And 2 weeks ago, there was a story in the Minneapolis paper, as I referenced earlier, that says downtown St. Paul is the new hotspot. It's a long-term strategy about bringing jobs, about bringing people to live downtown, people to play downtown. Go downtown right now. The Wild are about to start their new season. And look at what the vibrancy of that community. It's changing. It's changing because we're making a concerted effort to get there.
Thank you. Eva Ing, same question.
Well, we were talking about growing the tax base downtown, so it's very important that we bring jobs downtown. And what we need to do is we take some of those vacant office spaces we have downtown, and we create an entrepreneur incubation system where we take a vacant building, we put in the necessary office equipment, maybe staffing with clerical people, and we create some marshal resources for entrepreneurs and put them in the building and lease it out to small micro businesses that are promising upstarts that we screen ahead of time. And then we'll just charge them a few $100 for a small office, and so we'll just let them go at it and let them grow. And as they grow, they will grow jobs, and they will create a new economy. And not only do we have to do that, we've got to market downtown. We've got to have a dedicated staff that markets downtown and our businesses to people that are outside of the city, either within the state or outside the state, and we need to bring in businesses that will call this place home, call St. Paul home for a long time to come. So that way we can create jobs, create demand for office space vacancies, and then we also create demand for the housing market and then heat up the economy.
Chris Coleman, 1 minute rebuttal.
Well, I appreciate because we're doing a lot of those things, and it's pretty interesting that we've been able to make the kind of strides that we have. The fact that we worked really, really hard, you can't even believe the amount of time and the effort that went into bringing in a Cray Computer, because we knew it was critically important. So we worked with them, we went out to the company, I met with them personally. At the end of the day, the mayor of the city of St. Paul has to be personally engaged in this, and I have been. I would call the CEO up and I would say, here's my cell phone number. If you need anything from us, let us know. If there's anything that my staff can do. We put a business liaison in our office in the Planning and Economic Development Department so that we could work with small businesses very specifically to help figure out what their needs are and what their resources were available, helping them grow, helping them figure out how they can settle in St. Paul. So all the things that we were doing, I think, are really we're starting to see these seeds actually start to bloom, and we certainly saw that this last summer with the major announcements that we were able to bring those jobs into St. Paul.
Eva Ng, 1 minute, please.
I'd like to rebut that. With all difference, the efforts that you have put in, Mayor Coleman, so we lost 13,000 jobs this year as of June. So the 320 jobs you created at Cray doesn't even make a dent in the jobs that are being lost. And by the way, the economic development department that we have spends about $20 million a year, 19.7 to be exact. There is not a one-to-one return on investment for what we're paying.
Thank you. I'd like to move on to the third question. We're playing a bit of gymnastics with our topics this evening. We're bouncing from the downtown to our neighborhoods. If Eva Ng would be the first to address this next question. How will you prioritize the efforts of the City of St. Paul to keep our neighborhoods safe as crime in some areas is increasing and budgets are being cut?
I looked at the amount of money that we do spend on our police staff and how much police staff we have. We spend almost $100 million on our police staff and roughly 800 and something complements in full-time employees in that department. We have about 660 police, and I measured it against some of the safer cities in the United States, and one of them is Tucson. And in Tucson, we have 1.9 police persons to 1,000 residents, whereas in St. Paul, we actually have 2.2 police persons to 1,000 residents. So we do have police, but however, how are they working? This is something a consultant would look at. Are they spending all their time in the office doing paperwork? Are they not being present outside? We have pockets of crime, especially in the east side and the north side, that is disconcerting. And I do understand that there are some crimes that are not reported because they have to fit a certain category in order to be reported. So some of that is kind of going not the way we want it to go. So I think as a consultant, I would go in there and find out what are they doing? Are we doing best practices in the police? And are the police visible enough instead of pushing paper? While I was answering this question one time, there was a policeman in the audience, and he did say that there was a problem with them pushing too much paper and not doing the neighborhood work they ought to be doing.
Thank you. Chris Coleman, same question.
Well, thank you. I agree 100% that doing a best practices audit of the police department is a good idea, and that's why we did it 2 years ago. The police department is the largest budget in the city of St. Paul. It is close to $90 million right now, and it had never been examined to really figure out if we were doing what we needed to do, to figure out whether we were spending our money wisely, whether we were deploying our officers correctly, whether there was the correct management to line officer ratio. And so we went through that, and we were able to discover a lot of, I think, important information about how we were deploying our resources. One of the key findings was that we needed some additional officers. That for the city our size, we needed 630 officers, ideally, to continue the great community policing work that we have done in the city of St. Paul. How we deployed them was going to be critical, but one of the things that the audit identified was that because of our computer system being so outdated, that we were unable to really efficiently deploy our officers. A lot of the paper pushers in the office were simply there trying to figure out the payroll system. That's one of the reasons why we have moved forward with our new computer system, because it would allow us to more efficiently deploy our officers. Numbers of officers to numbers of citizens is a misleading statistic a little bit, just because in New York there are 8 officers per every citizen. In San Diego there's almost one officer per 1,000. It's 8 officers per 1,000 or 1 officer per 1,000. But that doesn't necessarily reflect crime rates. It's about what you can do with those officers.
Thank you. I'd like to stay in the neighborhoods and move on to the next topic. And Chris Coleman, if you'd be the first to address this next question. What is your plan to work with neighborhood organizations, volunteer groups, and nonprofits to address the issue of vacant residential property, boarded up homes, and other casualties of our economic crisis?
First of all, just to put it a little bit in the context, I mean, one of the great challenges that we have faced over these last 4 years was the real acceleration of foreclosures across the city. Not just a St. Paul problem, communities across this country. There's almost every city is dealing with a foreclosure crisis. And it's not just even core cities, it's suburban communities are really facing this. You see a lot of these buildings, a lot of these expensive houses that were built that people lost their jobs and they couldn't afford the mortgage anymore. So this is a nationwide problem, but we've been able to tackle it in a lot of creative ways. We worked with our city attorney's office to create new kind of methods, working with our lending institutions. We put together a demand letter with 6 of the largest mortgage holders in the city and said that we need to come to the table and help us figure out a workout plan. A lot of that was developed with our input from our community organizations. If you look at some of the creative work that's happening over in the Dayton's Bluff and the East Side community, trying to figure out how we get some of these houses back online, working very closely with their Department of Safety of Inspections to really identify which are the worst problem properties, putting resources, putting actual dollars into trying to get rid of those problem properties quickly. Working with our neighborhood organizations and our libraries to figure out mortgage foreclosure prevention. One of the most important things that you can do is prevent that foreclosure from happening in the first place. We were able to prevent 1,900 foreclosures because we added 6 additional workers in the city that spoke multiple languages that were able to go out and try to work with families to try to readjust their mortgage. So we're doing a lot of work on that front, a lot more to be done.
Thank you. Eva Ng, same question.
Well, so some of the foreclosure problems we have actually is still nationally, but some of it stem locally. And especially when I start talking to senior citizens who are on fixed incomes and part-time teachers who actually don't have high incomes, we have been taxing our citizens right out of their own homes. In the last 3 years, we have seen tax increases of 9%, 15.1%, 8.6%, and in 2010 we have another proposed 6%, if not more. And on top of that, we have a whole bunch of fees that went up back to back. We're talking about right-of-way maintenance increases. We're talking about building permit fee hikes. We're talking about paramedic and transportation fees going up, and then sewer and water fees going up year after year. And I'm telling you, there are a lot of senior citizens who came to me and said, please run and make a good run of it because we're being taxed right out of our homes. And they came to me with such hope in their eyes. I wanted to honor that, and I wanted to make sure that I bring this issue out. This is something we cannot continue. We cannot let this go on.
Moving on to the next question, segment of questions. And Eva Ng, if you'd be the first to address this question. The audience tonight would like to understand fully what their candidates' views are on the light rail, specifically Central Corridor, how it's going to impact businesses, individuals, families in that area and those that want to use it. So Eva, if you would be the first to address this question, please.
The main reason why I'm running is I want to make sure that everything we do in the city is in the best interest of every citizen here. And now the light rail, well, you know, it's a transportation system. And I think a lot of people like this kind of stuff because the transportation system is a very important part, an integral part of a vibrant city. And so I understand there is merit to light rail, but the plan that we do have in place at this time isn't perfect and is riddled with flaws. And especially is the timing. If it's during an economic upturn, I would think that we could withstand it. But during an economic downturn, the citizens are shouldering a lot of the cost. And this is not a good thing at this time. Especially there is existing rail north of the plan that is in place. Now this plan is roughly $1 billion in cost. And this is before business loss mitigation. And this is before paying off any of the lawsuits, and this is before eminent domain of any of the buildings that are in its way and building parking garages that are necessary. By the time you put all that stuff together, I bet you we're arriving at about $2 billion. $2 billion for roughly 40,000 riders. And not now, but in 2020. We're expecting to have 40,000 riders. That is $50,000 per head. You could send each one of those people around the world in a luxury cruise, buy them SUVs, and give them gas cards at the same time.
Chris Coleman, same question, please. Again, I'll ask the audience to refrain from your applause. I know these are very engaging topics, but it's really important to hear what your candidates have to say. Chris Coleman, same question.
Thank you. One of the things I'm proudest of is that after 30 years of stalling out, 30 years of no movement forward on light rail, 30 years of arguing back and forth over whether this alignment is best or that alignment is best, we are finally beginning construction on the light rail central corridor, or the central corridor light rail line. Think about that. Think about that community. Think about University Avenue. In the early 90s, when I was the president of the district council in the Frogtown neighborhood, we were trying to figure out how are we going to revitalize our community. How are we going to rebuild University Avenue? How are we going to make sure that our neighborhood was served by a first-class transit system? And it's finally happening. There is construction going on right now to move the utility lines in downtown St. Paul. After 30 years of discussion, I have a Minnesota Daily from March 10th, 1982, that has an article that's talking about finally, after years of discussion about light rail through the University of Minnesota, we're finally able to move forward on this thing. It's about time that St. Paul got its fair share. And if we say no to light rail at this point, we're saying no to development in downtown. We're saying no to the East Metro being a part of a first-class transit system. We're saying no to thousands and thousands of construction jobs along that line. We're saying no to $1 billion worth of investment that will spur another $1 billion worth of private investment. Now is exactly the time to be building that line. Now is exactly time to be investing in the future of the city of St. Paul. It is about time that we begin to construct the light rail line in the central corridor.
Thank you. Eva Ng, 1 minute for rebuttal, please.
Now, Mayor Chris Coleman, I know that you are passionate about light rail, but 30 years of discussion means it did not work for 30 years. Why does it work now? We're looking at thousands of construction jobs that are one-time jobs. So where are those people going to go after the next 4 years? And what about the 1,000 businesses that are on University right now? You know, they're going to get their parking taken away from them. They're not going to have the traffic that they're going to have. They spent 24 years over there building their businesses, and they're getting ready to go bankrupt. And a lot of them cannot move. They cannot afford to move, so they're thinking of walking away bankrupt in their 60s. This is a travesty to the businesses along the university corridor. This is not right. This is not the time to do it, sir. We could delay this, and maybe when we do it right, with the right amount of money, and we have a great separation where it's safe. We can put it below ground or above ground so that we could have a whole new dimension of traffic system, not just a compromise of the existing.
Thank you. Our next question today also addresses a topic very close to all of the forum attendees' hearts, I'm sure. And it's in regards to taxation. Chris Coleman, if you'd be the first to address this question, please. A great deal of the property in St. Paul is non-taxable because it is occupied by government buildings, nonprofit organizations, schools, and the like. That leaves individual property owners and business owners with an undue burden. How do you plan to address the issue of property taxes in St. Paul and their impact on our business community and our individual residence owners?
Well, St. Paul is blessed in a lot of ways to have some great organizations and institutions. The beautiful cathedral on top of the hill doesn't pay taxes, but it certainly is a nice asset to the city. All these wonderful colleges and universities that are a critical part of the fabric of this town don't pay taxes, but they're an essential part of the well-being of the city of St. Paul. And yes, even government, the state capital. We are the state capital, and that's an okay thing. The fact of the matter is that also means that we have visitors that come from across the state of Minnesota to come and see, to participate in government, taking school children down for field trips. But the fact of the matter is, that question is correct. There's about 25% of the property in the city of St. Paul doesn't pay taxes. Now, it doesn't mean they don't pay anything. That's where some of the fees, the street and sewer maintenance fees and some of those other things do get paid. My predecessor, when he was first dealing with the cuts that the Valenti administration was making, one of the responses that he had was to raise those fees dramatically to try to capture some money from the non-tax-paying entities. Property taxes are not a particularly good way to raise money. They're regressive. They make it very difficult for people on fixed incomes. But the fact of the matter is we have lost over $155 million in local government aid since 2003. But our obligation to put police officers on the street, our obligation to fight fires, our obligation to run medic runs hasn't changed. And we need to figure out a way to be able to do those things.
Thank you. Eva Ng, same question.
Well, we have to look at our property or assets in St. Paul. We have performing assets and non-performing assets. Well, performing assets means they produce a revenue, and non-performing means they don't produce a revenue. And some of them, worse than that, are not only non-performing, they're also cash drains. For instance, we purchased a piece of property from 3M for $1 million. We're very happy to have it because I think it's a very scenic piece of property, but it's now fenced in. It's sitting there, not doing anything. Meanwhile, we have to pay to maintain it, so therefore it becomes a cash drain. So we need to minimize the number of properties that are cash drains and turn them into performing assets whenever we can. And we cannot do something with that. We might consider what they call divesting, meaning to sell it to somebody who's a responsible owner and let them turn it into a revenue-producing asset.
I'd like to move on to another related topic regarding the park system in the city of St. Paul. Eva Ng, if you'd be the first to address this question. There is a great value to the park system of the city of St. Paul, and there is a great cost to the park system of the city of St. Paul. Would you please address your perspective on the issue of the park system?
Well, that was exactly perfectly phrased. Yes, it's a great value to St. Paul because it's really part of the nice scenery, the landscape that we do have. It is a wonderful asset for St. Paul. But yes, it comes with a price. 580 full-time employees are part of that system. That is a huge complement of people that we do employ. And I'm looking at it. I see opportunity there where we can streamline some costs out of the general fund from this particular department. There is a lot of opportunity. I have not investigated fully into it, so I will come up with more answers further down the road.
Thank you. Chris Coleman, same question.
Well, one of the areas that's really been, quite frankly, I think hit hardest by some of the budget challenges that we have is our Parks and Rec department in the city of St. Paul. We had 43 rec centers in the city of St. Paul, 41 that the city was operating when I took office. In 2006, my park director came to me with a proposal that really just kind of, closed down, fewer hours in the building, fewer services available, and I asked him to put a plan together that was different than that. Didn't just kind of reduce and choke the life out of the system, but really made some fundamental changes in that system. He came back later with a proposal that ended up resulting in 8 rec centers closing in the city of St. Paul. That was a really tough decision. But we knew that if we closed 8 rec centers in the city, we could not only save a significant amount of money, but we could invest some of the money that we were saving back into the facilities that we continue to operate. So that it wasn't just somebody rolling the ball out and saying, go ahead kids, play. It was someone that was engaging with those kids after school, having them participate in educational opportunities, working with families, working with seniors. In our 2010 budget, we have a proposal to close another 8 rec centers. Those are hard decisions, but we know that we can streamline those services, but we know we can also continue to use some of the savings to reinvest in the facilities that we continue to operate. Our park systems are one of the real jewels. I grew up in that park system. No one is more passionate about that park system than I am, but we've had to make some tough choices, and we have done that.
Thank you. Eva Ng?
I could rebut that a little bit. Like I said, the park system, there is a lot of opportunity when we save money in that area. I think one of the things we ought to do is, something that Mayor Coleman has already begun. was to partner up with some of the charitable resources that we have in town and let them run some of the centers and have more volunteers running some of the rec centers and help St. Paul save some money. Everybody says it's a wonderful system, but at the same time it is costly. And during times of economic downturn, we do have to make some tough choices, and I will be willing to make those tough choices when time comes.
Thank you. Chris Coleman, 1 minute rebuttal.
I think that's really one of the victories that we've had over these last 4 years, in spite of the challenges that we faced, is to be able to take some of those facilities and really reprogram. Orchard Rec Center, for instance, that was really kind of just not many services were being provided there now, is thriving every night with kids that are participating in the Blackhawk soccer field. Dunning, which was just down the street from the new Jimmy Lee Rec Center, we were able to turn that over to an arts program that was providing out-of-school arts programming for children. Denoyer was being turned over to the community, so they started programming it. But in addition to that, not only did we turn those facilities over, but we were able to improve some of the outdoor space and maintain that. So the kids in the neighborhood were still able to play at those facilities. They were still able to take advantage of some of those things. Again, our park system is a real jewel, but we have made some really tough choices. And I think it's an example of where by working with the community, by bringing people together to come to a decision, instead of just pointing fingers at people and blaming them for problems, we actually were able to solve some of those challenges.
Thank you. Our next question, again, staying in our neighborhoods. According to a past study conducted by the League of Women Voters of St. Paul, we are hosting this forum tonight in one of the most civically engaged neighborhoods in St. Paul. Traditionally, the Highland Park neighborhood turns out to the polls at a very, very high rate. Chris Coleman, would you please be the first to address the next question? What will you do as mayor to address the disparity among our neighborhoods in St. Paul, to reach out to be sure that other voices in St. Paul are also heard, and to communicate, to send and receive input from all of the neighborhoods in St. Paul?
Well, first of all, Mayor of St. Paul would criticize Highland at their own risk. Highland is just a great example. As I was driving up here today from my house, even in this rain and the gloom and the yuckiness, I was driving up Fairview and I went, wow, this is a gift. What a gorgeous neighborhood, that incredible anchor to the city of St. Paul. But I believe that all of our neighborhoods have the potential to be as strong as Highland Park is. That's why I launched Invest St. Paul. Invest St. Paul was an initiative that came out of clear statistics that some of our neighborhoods were really struggling. They were really in challenge. Didn't matter whether you were looking at crime statistics or whether you were looking at joblessness or whether you were looking at foreclosures, any number of factors. There were 4 key neighborhoods in our community that were really struggling. And we also knew that there were multiple problems, and so it wasn't going to be just one tool that fixed it. My predecessor had Housing 5000. There was nothing wrong with Housing 5000 in and of itself, but it was a one-tool approach to a multifaceted problem. So we started looking at what were the opportunities that we needed to create for kids? How do we create great out-of-school time programming? How did we deal with the mortgage foreclosure crisis? What were we doing to try to create vibrancy in the commercial strips? All of those things just trying to continue to build. St. Paul is a city of neighborhoods, and if one neighborhood in the city of St. Paul is struggling, then St. Paul is struggling. We need to continue to work to make sure that all of our neighborhoods are strong.
Thank you. Eva Ng, same question.
I put together a communications program so that I can stay in touch with every citizen in St. Paul, and I put that on the media release, and I don't think they picked it up, so I'm going to tell you right here. I created this communications program so that I can listen to every neighborhood in St. Paul. In 1 quarter, there are about 12 weeks. I was planning to meet with 12 neighborhoods, but then my advisor said that's too busy. Try to bring it down to 7 wards. So that's what I said. Okay, we'll go 7 wards. So every ward, I'm going to go to, say, a Tuesday. Every Tuesday, I will spend 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock at a ward and listen to every gripe they've got. And I'm just listening. And I'm going to do this every Tuesday until all the wards are exhausted. And I'm going to do it quarterly. And hopefully, in 1 term's time, that's 4 years, I will wipe out the top 3 gripes out of that ward. That's what I plan to do. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create an online forum where you can log on as yourself as an alias or somebody anonymous, whatever, and you talk to me about topics that concern you. You tell me exactly how you feel about that, so I know I can read the forum and I can find out what's going on, and I will know whatever I do and how you feel about it one way or the other. They will help me gauge how to conduct our business. And another thing I'm going to do is I want to create a citizen advisory council where we marshal up all the charitable resources in town, and then we'll find a way to elevate and actualize the human potential in town. And then, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I've got one more thing I want to say.
We will have time for closing remarks.
All right.
Chris Coleman, 1 minute rebuttal.
I would just say that St. Paul is a national model in citizen participation. In the early 70s, we created the district council system. That's the voice of the community. That's the voice that I have worked with over the last 4 years. It's what I grew up in. My first, I guess, elected position, if you call it that, was a member of the district council in the Frogtown neighborhood. It gave voice to the people. It gave voice to the concerns. It was a forum to bring business organizations together with charitable organizations, with the people that lived in those neighborhoods to figure out how we can tackle some problems. They've done some incredible things, even in spite of the challenges that we've had in our budget. We've been able to hold the funding for our district council systems constant. They could use more resources. We don't have those resources available, but that is the voice of the people, and that is the voice that I listen to as mayor.
Thank you. Eva Ng?
I have to rebut that because what's going on is there's a disconnect between city council, the mayor's office, and what's going on in the neighborhoods. I don't think they're exercising a will when we're saying, stop, we cannot have any more of these assessments, and we're being taxed out of our homes, and we're not being heard. So there is a huge disconnect. So whatever system is in place is not working, okay? And then the last thing I wanted to say before I finish was that I want to create business advisory councils for small, mid-sized, and large businesses. I want to hear them all out. I want to know how to grow our economy and make this a very, very vibrant city. And we want to become a preeminent city, not just settling for second place behind Minneapolis.
Thank you. The next question is a little bit more open-ended and allows our candidates to address it from the perspective that they see most valuable. Eva Ng, if you'd be the first to address the question. In light of the economic crisis, budget shortfalls, and funding issues, what can you do as mayor to make the city of St. Paul government run more efficiently?
Oh, there's so much we can do, so much. Well, best practices is